live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com. This is the Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. Everything copacetic at your house? You got still have power there?
We've got power. We've got internet. What more does a guy need? That's it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing we don't need, and that is more gun laws. Holy suffering succotash. Here we go again. How many times have we heard from this government, gun control? We're going to get the hunters. We're going to get the farmers. We're going to get the target shooters. But as far as the real people using smuggled guns, which we all know most of them are that are being used for crimes, well, we'll take it a lot easier. We'll lessen some of the penalties for gun crimes. As you might expect, Justin Trudeau, wasting no time and using this latest mass tragic shooting in the United States to justify yet another attack on legal gun owners in this country. According to the Liberals, they've just announced they're going to be, quote, moving ahead with new gun control measures in the coming weeks. Now, let's do a little quick review, okay? Trudeau has already made many changes to our gun laws, including strengthening background checks and banning more than about 1,500 models of so-called assault-style firearms. Hello, remember his great gun buyback program? This was announced about 3 years ago. He was going to buy back. And we never did get a figure. Well, so far the gun buyback program has not begun, like many other of Trudeau's promises, right? So once again, we're going after legal gun owners. We're going after the farmers. We're going after the hunters. We're going after target shooters, okay? Going after hobbyists. Because, I mean, anybody with a brain knows that that's not the problem. Hey, come on. People aren't being shot in the streets of Toronto or in the backwoods of Lanark with legally owned guns. Hunters and target shooters and farmers are not off shooting people on the Queensway in Ottawa. They're not. We all know that almost all, in fact, there are some figures that indicate that almost 100% of all guns used in the commission of crime are illegally owned. In almost every case, they have been smuggled across the border from the United States. I know this. You know it. Trudeau knows it, but it doesn't matter. I mean, let's be very honest, okay? Hunters and farmers, hey, they ain't going to be voting Liberal. So let's get them. One of the real problems here, and this is the elephant in the room. Excuse me. A lot, not all. So don't come jumping down my throat and talk to me about racism, okay? I've been called racist so many times that it just sort of runs off my back. But let's be very, very, very honest and frank here. A lot, not all, but a lot of the smuggled guns are coming across the St. Lawrence River at night in boats from native reserves. So there's no way, particularly today, that Trudeau or any Liberal wants to go after Aboriginals. No way do they want to be seen as pursuing Aboriginals. So we've got a gun problem in the United States. Here's a good way to make some hay here, pretend that we're really going to fix the gun problem here in Canada. So let's go after the legal gun owners, okay? The fact of the matter is, I don't know how many of you people know. Have you ever tried to buy a gun here? Look, first of all, forget handguns, okay? It's almost impossible to legally own a handgun. Essentially, you have to be a member of a legitimate club. You almost have to offer up your firstborn in order to get a license for a handgun. The restrictions are unbelievable. Background police checks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even former wives. You know what? just to show you how stringent. If you want to, for any, you have, first of all, you have to have a reason to have the handgun, a legitimate target, whatever it is. But one of the backgrounds, they'll even check with the former wife to make sure, okay, that you're safe to have a gun. Now, as far as rifles go, when you buy the rifle, you have to leave your name, address. They do a police check, and you have to go through a safety check. It's not easy to buy a rifle. It's almost impossible to buy a handgun. Those are laws that are already in effect.
You have to take a course too, don't you? Before
yeah, safety course, gun safety course.
Yep.
Yeah, that's for rifle. But for handguns, I'm not. As I say, forget it. If you want a handgun today in Canada, the only way you can buy them for, I don't know what the going price is, a few $100s in the market. All you have to do is let somebody know that you're looking for a handgun. No problem. But these guns, almost inevitably, in fact, almost every single gun that's used in the commission of crime is not a legal gun. These are illegal guns. So what is Trudeau doing? Passing all sorts of more laws. These punks, these drug addicts, the gang bangers, they're not legal. They're not registering their guns. They're not buying their guns legally. These are smuggled guns. And if we really wanted to stop it, you know how we would do it? Certainly put a big crimp in it. Have all sorts of patrols, maybe even military patrols. Some helicopters. They now have radar and so forth that even at night. And drones. Yeah, drones. That's right. Thank you, John. Drones to patrol the St. Lawrence River. Almost any resident of Cornwall who knows what's going on will tell you that, particularly in a nice warm summer night, like their sleep is disturbed by the sound of all of these boats coming across with smuggled cigarettes, other items, I don't know what else, and guns. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. The police know it. The military knows it. Trudeau knows it. The Liberals know it. Conservatives know it. I know it. You know it. But as a matter of fact, if you check, you will see that the Conservatives under Harper, they tightened a lot of gun laws. They had minimum sentences if you had a gun in the commission of a crime. The Liberals have scrapped most of that. I'm going to tell you right now that you can be out there shooting up the streets of Ottawa or Toronto or Hamilton, and in all probability, you will spend less time in jail than some of the organizers of the truckers' convoy. That's how ridiculous all of this is. So I throw this out as one. If there's anything else that you want to discuss, are you satisfied with the speed with which hydro crews are restoring power? I think they're doing stellar job with all of the damage that was done. You may have a different experience. I don't know. But folks, my question to you is, do we really need to harass hunters, farmers, target shooters more? Do you really believe that guns being used in crime are legally owned guns? Do you understand? There was a problem a number of years ago with, homes were being broken into and guns were lying around and being stolen. Today, if you have a gun of any kind, boy, I'll tell you the restrictions. It's got to be locked up, and if they find out that your gun is not locked in a special container in your home, you're in big trouble. Big trouble. So I'm telling you, the regulations are there. It's virtually impossible to buy a handgun now. If you buy a rifle, you got to just about give up your first and second born. So here we go again. I just don't understand it. We all remember the cost. Remember, they're going to register all guns. You can't buy a gun legally today without registering it. You have to give your name and address and a police badge. I go through all of this again. All right.
Go ahead. To your point, and by the way, keep the comments coming. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, etc. Our number here, 613-413-2217. We did have some audio server issues getting to smart speakers. That was resolved about 20 minutes before we came on the air, so you should be good there. But as I listen to you talk, about smuggling across the St. Lawrence, etc., all you got to do is look to the story in Halifax of, our biggest murderous rampage there, where, 22 people killed? He was smuggling guns across across the legal border, rolled up in the back of his truck.
Yeah.
Underneath the tonneau cover. I mean, our border guards aren't even checking that, and he knew it.
Yeah, it's very true. Now, as I said, not all guns are being smuggled by native groups, but a lot of them are. They're smuggling in. We all know the cigarette smuggling. Well, I'm going to tell you, a lot of those boats and automobiles and trucks and so forth coming in across the border, they're not carrying only contraband cigarettes. They're carrying guns and other smuggled items, and everybody knows it. But these days, there's no way that any government, certainly not a liberal government, in any way is going to appear to be picking on Aboriginals. That's a fact of life. I'm not saying that they're the only ones doing it, but I'm telling you, it's a major problem. There's no question about it. And another major problem is, I'll tell you something else. Every time you read a story about a shooting someplace, almost inevitably, you see and read the phrase, he was known or she was known to police, which means they probably had a record about that long. Well, maybe that long or that long, or that long. I mean, I remember covering court cases years ago. I remember a guy. This was in Brantford, Ontario. The guy showed up in court. He had 30, I'll never forget this. He had 32 cases and he never had spent a day in jail. They just kept remanding him and back out on bail. And he just committed another crime when he was laughing. 32 times he appeared before the courts and never once spent a day in jail. On the other hand, helped to organize a perfectly legal truckers convoy, and you'll spend weeks in jail, and the Crown will try to put you there for life, for God's sake.
Okay, so did you see the story that broke today from the Supreme Court of Canada?
No, what's that?
The Supreme Court of Canada unanimously struck down life without parole for mass murderers.
I did see that, yes.
Yeah, life without parole is cruel and unusual punishment.
That's for mass murderers.
For mass murderers.
So if this 18-year-old kid that shot and killed 18, 19, 20 people in a school, if he was still alive, and this was in Canada, even though he's a mass murderer, to put him behind bars the rest of his life would be cruel and unusual.
It sure would.
It's a revolving door justice system, unless you piss the sitting government. If you really tick off Trudeau, you may spend a lot more time in jail than if you shoot up the streets. But these are smuggled guns. And this idea that somehow or other they're going to you know what? It's just a charade. It's to make the liberals, to make Trudeau look like he's really getting tough on gun crime. Well, I mean, most of the shoot 'em ups are, as we all know, in the mean streets of Toronto. Okay, this is where the bulk, not them all, but the bulk. And in almost every case, those are smuggled guns, and they're being used by gangs. Sometimes ethnic gangs, sometimes not. Drug is a big problem. Okay, it seems to me that almost every druggie is carrying an illegal weapon. John, what are people saying here?
All right, let's get to your comments. Joshua was first up. He says, I think it's disgusting to use a tragedy and people's emotions to fly in the face of common sense. Very few laws will prevent these tragedies. He who wants a gun will find a gun.
I couldn't agree more. He's taking advantage of this. Everybody's attention is focused on this. It's just a terrible tragedy. But let me say this. While I oppose, what I am saying is that in Canada, our laws are already very, very strict. In the United States, they're not. I remember a number of years ago, we were in Ocala, Florida. My uncle lived there. And Debbie went into a drugstore, needed something in the drugstore. And she had to go to the gun counter to get what she wants. She couldn't get over it. But so there's a question. There is simply no way, I'm sorry. There's no way that an 18-year-old kid should be allowed to buy a weapon that's got a magazine with dozens, if not hundreds of bullets, an assault weapon. There's no way that they should be allowed to buy it. I'm sorry. But that's not the problem in Canada by a long shot. Okay, what are other people saying here?
Yeah, John? A lot of comments about that. Nobody needs an AK-47, et cetera.
Well, precisely.
Et cetera. Yeah. I mean,
let me just finish. I just want to tell you a little story. I had a dear uncle. He passed a couple of years ago. My favorite uncle. He was like a brother, and they live near Ocala. We were visiting him, and he and his wife, they finally had to move away from Florida, and they moved next to us in the Bahamas. Do you know why? Because his neighbors were target practicing early in the morning with AK-47s. He said he would wake up in
Lovely.
the morning with the sound of machine guns. This is just north of Ocala in Florida. And he just couldn't take it. It's this craziness. He said, it's crazy. And it is. Go ahead, John.
Kelly's on YouTube says, I was just going to message the same message, Lowell. Those involved with the convoy are being detained while other criminals are being released on bail, etc. So sick of double standards.
Very true. Very true.
Let's go to Breck. Mass murderers should be first on the list for the death sentence. Peter says Trudeau's all about control, not toughing up the criminal code the police have suggested to him. And says liberals, quote, we're working on it, end quote.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. That's a very common phrase. By the liberal. Yeah, we're working on it.
We're working on it. Let's go to text 613.
We're working on bringing Afghanistan people who helped us. Yeah, we've been working on that. We're still working on bringing refugees from Ukraine. Yeah, we're working on that. We're working on the buyback. Oh, go ahead. Oh, by the way, we're also working on changing the voting system. Go ahead.
Yeah, and internet radio, because, AM did so well during that storm.
Right.
Anyway, all right, exactly, Lowell. Trudeau knows hunters don't vote for him, and he has to show his Ivy League liberal friends he's doing something about firearms. To have a gun, you have to have a hunter safety course, RCMP background check with your wife's signature to assure you are okay, as well as it has to be locked up with the ammo locked in another location. I'll tell you, gangsters don't walk around with a rifle or a shotgun in their pants.
Yeah. Do you think gangsters are locking up their ammunition in a separate compartment?
Well, the good gangsters are.
You know what? You might as well laugh as cry, folks. Go ahead, John.
Barb's on Facebook. How about how hard it is for some to get help for mental health around us? Seems like a dead end in our healthcare for these young people. And there's been conversation, too, about the tie-in with mental health and the acquisition of guns. Brian says the assault rifles that Trudeau wants to ban from sport shooters are called police carbines when they have them. JP, our border is a joke. Corleans is going after Olympic shooters and international competition shooters. Over to Twitch, where Laurentian View Terry's comment is as follows. The punks and gangsters are all going to give up their guns. They are shaking in their boots. Let me see. Breck. I think this is the first time we've heard from Breck. I don't recognize that name. There was already a story in the news reporting about illegal guns flown across our border with drones. Maybe we need anti-air guns along our border to shoot illegal drones down. I saw that story just a couple of days ago. I couldn't
really.
Get over
That is new. Drones, you say, are now smuggling guns.
Yep.
Well, somebody is controlling the drones, obviously.
Well, you've been down to the St. Lawrence more times than I have, probably, Lowell, and you know how easy it is. I mean, these drones, the range on them is fantastic. You can stand on one end, the Canadian side or the U.S. side, and fly a drone across there, no problem. See the thing from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, we had an island in the Thousand Islands for many, many years.
You could hand it over to the guy.
Oh, it was wild. And one of the things, of course, in the Thousand Islands, there's so many little channels and everything. There's even a place called Smuggler's Cove. I caught some great fish. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Near the little town of Ivy Lee. It's called Smuggler's Cove. This is where when the boats were running away from the cops, there's a shoal there. And a lot of the smugglers' boats had very, very low draft or high, in other words, they could go over top of a reef and the police boats couldn't. So they would run into Smuggler's Cove. The police boats couldn't follow them. And everybody knew it. Go ahead, John.
It's 20 minutes into the show. Let's get a word in for Shields, shall we?
For Shields, right? Absolutely. Once again, folks, as the cost of living, the cost of living continues to skyrocket. My goodness. And not only that, but now, I mean, a lot of people, including in the Green household, we got to throw away a lot of food, which means we have to go out and buy all that other food. So everybody is watching the pennies, even people in high income. You got to watch your pennies. Well, a good place to watch your pennies. If you need a new appliance, there's no place better than Shields up in Pakenham. As I've said many times before, their cost of doing business is lower in Pakenham. Property taxes are lower, et cetera, et cetera. So they pass those savings along to you. Check it out. They got all of it. I know it's Pakenham, but they've got a huge warehouse. All of the major brands are there, but 99% of everything that you could possibly want in appliances are there. And the website shows them all, the prices, the sizes, the makes, the brands, the colors, etc., etc. Shields.ca. SCHEELS.ca. Thank you, John.
All right, Corleen, if they check politicians like they check handgun owners, most of the people in office right now would be fired.
Well, one of the things about a lot of politicians is they lock their ammunition in a different place too.
Took me a moment.
Because I'm going to tell you, they're firing a hell of a lot of blanks in Parliament. Go ahead.
There it is. There it is. JP, you need an FAC to purchase a handgun considered a restricted weapon, and it is a difficult process.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Peter says, trying to buy a gun here, be better off trying to win Super 7 lottery. If you get the license, the database runs your profile daily, checks the laws and regulations. Once you own a weapon, you have to follow very strict controls. I've read the restrictions and laws around it. We have one of the toughest gun laws in the world.
We do. We do.
Why in God's name does anybody need an assault rifle AK-47, asks Mike. Well, because, well, in the States, my neighbor's got one. Now I need one.
Yeah, but you see, I think sometimes we get confused. You're not buying AK-47s legally in this country. Believe me.
No
way. Okay, let's get that straight. In the United States, you can probably walk into a Shoppers Drug Mart and buy a dozen AK-47s. You may not even have to give your name, but not in Canada. It's totally, absolutely, utterly different in this country. But I think, and in this case, I think an earlier emailer was correct on that. I think Trudeau is taking advantage of this. There's a lot of angst over what's happening in the United States. We don't have the same problem here. Yes, we have gun crime here, almost all with smuggled weapons. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, driving through the States is a totally different beast. I remember going up and down the strip in Myrtle Beach. You had, place number 1 sells beach towels, place number 2 sells fireworks. You got a tax office and then a gun shop and then the liquor store and then the gun shop. And I mean, you're right. It's like Tim Hortons around here. They're just that frequent.
I'm going to tell you what. When Debbie went into that drugstore in Ocala, Florida, I forget what it was. She wanted I don't know, some face cream or something, and she had to buy it at the gun counter. She's buying it there, and there's the guns, all every kind of gun possibly, all lined up, and the ammunition is all there. Said, "Oh my!" She came running out and says, "I can't believe this." Go ahead.
So Ray's got a question for you. He says, "Can someone describe an assault rifle? What's the difference?"
Well, you know what? Let's not get technical here. It's I think sometimes the gun owners get carried away with this stuff. We've got all sorts of gun laws, and whether this is that's some arcane argument. Go ahead, please.
I mean, basically, an assault rifle is a lot of rounds quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus versus click and reload. Okay. Todd, take the guns out of the equation. Let's look at why someone has so much hate built up inside them. Drugs, violence, and video games. What has changed? Asked Todd.
Well, there's obviously a culture. I mean, there is a gun culture, particularly in some states more than others in the United States. We don't have that same culture here. We have gun crime, yes, but we don't have the gun culture that they have in the United States.
True.
And that's part of it. Right, as it is now, there are more mass shootings in the United States than in all other Western nations combined. Go ahead.
Lori brings up that there was a guy shot in Toronto yesterday by the police. He was holding a pellet gun.
Well, then, you know what? If you're going to walk around with a gun of any kind, pellet gun or whatever, I mean, you're just stupid.
I defy you to be in the position of a police officer and tell me the difference between a pellet gun and a real gun.
Let's face it, there are just plain stupid people out there. There's no other way to describe it. There are stupid people. I'm going to tell you, the guy that invents a pill to cure stupidity is going to make a lot of money.
All right, I'm working on it. All right, here we go.
Oh, man.
Christine, at the bottom of the gun license registration, it has a place for the conjugal partner to sign, and under it says, if you have safety concerns about this application, please call, and then there's a 1-800.
Very true. And I'm going to tell you that former wives are often contacted as well.
Sure.
Go ahead.
As they should be.
Yeah.
in my opinion. JP, I find the ignorance of the anti-gun lobby is truly astounding. Carrie says Hydra's doing great. We did bring them up earlier. She says Hydra's doing great. Crews from different parts of the country. Yes, I've seen lots of trucks.
Yeah, that's great. There's,
Yep.
they've moved in here. When we were down in the Bahamas, believe it or not, there were crews from Nova Scotia. That's one of the. I'm going to tell you, Bahamians love Canadians. We were one of the first to come in there and bring hydro back to the island of Grand Bahama. If they find out in the Bahamas that you're Canadian, man, oh man, you're lovely. You're likely to get hugged right in the street. Go ahead.
There was a comment that came in earlier before we got on the air, and this is a different subject altogether. If you're up for that, let's go here
Go,
because
sure.
it is kind of an open house. Okay, the text number 613-413-2217. Jamal says, I'm from Africa and have been listening to Lowell for the past 20 years. Did not always agree with him on his anti-immigration and Anglo-Saxon rights, but lauded him for his stand on costs incurred by taxpayers and alerting the community on government frivolous expenditure. I would like him to comment on the current state of OC Transpo. I see people at 9 p.m. at night waiting for buses for over an hour. Drug dealers openly selling their wares, misfits high or drunk, sharing a seat with a young schoolgirl and behaving belligerently. I would certainly love to get him a drink and have a chat.
All right, I have a. First of all, I have a comment. I have never been anti-immigration. I've always supported immigration. We must have immigration here. I certainly support immigration that helps Canada, that presents an advantage to Canada. In other words, skilled people. But I've never been anti-immigrant. I don't know where people get that idea. This is a country of immigrants. My ancestors were immigrants, as were almost everybody's. Even, you know what? Even natives, they came from other parts as well. So where this idea came, I am not anti-immigrant, not at all, not whatsoever. And as far as OC Transpo, I've given up. I think that there's utter chaos. There's obviously a total lack of control in that organization. I think that management is sadly lacking. To be honest, can I be very blunt? I think that people running OC Transpo can't tell the difference between their arse and page 12. That's the opinion I get. And you mentioned this. I see buses, great big buses, double-deck buses, running around Canada at night.
Drives
Nobody in them.
me nuts.
Nobody in them. In fact, for a couple of years, I used to report this. They couldn't have cared less. You know, why are you running a double-decker bus in Canada at night when maybe there's one or two people at the very? I mean, you got to have anyway. I just think that the thing is totally, absolutely, rottenly run, totally out of control, chaos.
Agreed.
That's my feeling.
Yeah, I'm watching articulated buses, double-decker buses at 11 o'clock at night, driving through a residential street where there are 3 schools, a kid's park, and they're completely empty. It seems to me that, like, I remember back in my high school years, we had a thing called teletranspo. If you needed the bus to come down your street because you needed to use OC Transpo, you dialed a number and it would do a little detour down your street to pick you up. Can we not run some sort of minivan a la Uber? I mean,
It would just require too much thought, too much innovation.
I'm a 6-minute drive to South Key Station, for crying out loud. A 4-minute drive to Greenboro Station. We don't need an articulated bus driving down the street at 11 o'clock at night. Jamal, way to go. You got me fired up, Jamal.
But I mean, the fact that we're hiring 80 more bus drivers with declining ridership
makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. Go ahead, John.
We are just about out of time, Lowell, so let's wrap this up. I'll quickly go through the last 4 or 5 comments I haven't had a chance to get to. Brian says it's a 2-day course to get your RPAL restricted PAL to buy pistols and some rifles. Once you pass the course, you put into the RCMP for the background check, wife, etc. That can take up to 3 months minimum. Some people have been waiting up to 2 years for this, probably due to COVID. Yes, you need a legit reason to own one, like sports shooting.
Yeah.
He says, note that even having your RPAL does not mean you can walk in and buy a pistol. You can buy one, but to transfer it to you can take a minimum of 30 days or more. Legal gun owners are tightly restricted. Gangbangers can shoot and get away with everything. Heck, go down to Toronto. You can rent a gun. Joshua says, people being murdered by mass murderers is cruel and unusual punishment. And last word to you, Ann, today on Facebook. I wish they would get that the issue is not the guns. It's why these troubled people are feeling compelled to do these things. Jerry Agar mentioned this on his show the other day, and I agree. This young man did not have a good experience either in that school or another one. To prevent further tragedies, that is what needs to be monitored. More heads up to those troubled souls before they commit these heinous acts.
Thank you all. We will be back. Have a good weekend, folks. Back on Monday.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.